Tap In Tap Out. I'm your host, Alex, and as always, in this podcast, we tap into discussions around mental wellness, spirituality, and culture, and tap out of the patterns that no longer serve us. Amen. How are y'all doing this week? I am doing pretty good. I'm not gonna hold you. I have my do-rag on. Okay, wait. Side note, for those that don't know, I started cutting my own hair last year. Actually, yeah, around March when the pandemic really kicked in, but obviously I was out of a barber, and so I started cutting my own hair, and that also encouraged me to figure out new things to try with my hair and stuff. And growing up, I always had waves, but I've never like trained waves before, and so I got me because I had time, so I got me a do-rag, and it worked in my favor, to say the least. And so yeah, I have my do-rag in today, but I stopped using it for a few months this year. I don't know why. I think I got lazy. But I'm taking some photos soon, and so I was like, let me get the do-rag out because I need the waves to come through for this photo shoot. Anyway, I hope you're all doing okay out there. I'm hanging in there, trying to find joy and small victories where I can. Last episode was great. I sat down with my friend Nick and we played another round of We're Not Really Strangers. If you haven't checked it out yet, please check it out. You guys seem to love that episode, so I'm happy. You guys took a liking to him. If you guys want him back, let me know because I will drag him into the studio. And by studio, I mean the Zoom call. So yes, on to the inbox. If you don't know what the inbox is where you can send in your questions, concerns, comments about the show. I accept advice questions, personal questions. Literally just ask me anything. If you want to submit to the inbox, you can email heartofshema@gmail.com or just DM my personal page @justalextoday on Instagram or Twitter. As always, I am not a licensed professional, but I can tell you what I would do. So keep that in mind. This week, somebody has asked for music recommendations or new music out there that I'm listening to. I probably won't, shake up your life, but I do have a few recommendations based on my rotation. In terms of new music, honestly, this week the Save Your Tears remix came out with The Weeknd and Ariana, and that's pretty good. If you like Ariana, which if you don't, I'll leave it like that, but check that out. Of course, I have to mention Jhené Aiko because, as we know, I have to mention her at least once a month. But this was probably February or March, but she released her first mixtape on all platforms. It's called Sailing Souls, as in like a boat sail, so Sailing Souls mixtape. So I don't know if you guys have this, but I have like some music or songs that like I play just to like start my music, and then I have to like find what I would listen to. So Sailing Souls is where I always start, and then I figure out what I want to listen to after that. So from Sailing Souls, my tops, well, I guess, honorable mentions are Space Jam, Sailing Not Selling is really good. Let me see, Do Better Blues, and 2 Seconds. She released, I think 2 Seconds is actually, she released some bonus tracks in the mixtape she released. I don't know if it's like music that she always had or new music she made to add to the album. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, she added 3 or 4 bonus tracks that are also really good. Also Snapped is also really good. But the whole album is great. And it's just crazy to see that she was able to do that from the start. And we've just seen this evolution of her. And so, yes, it's a Jhené Aiko Stan podcast. So you're not surprised. Lastly, I have Hotels is pretty old now. No, I won't say it's old, but it's less recent than more recent, I feel like. But I kind of went back into Hotels recently from Jhené Aiko, from Jasmine Sullivan, and I've been listening a lot to The Other Side, which is kind of like my inspiration song right now when I feel like I'm like want to escape to like, I don't know, out of reality. I play The Other Side. The production on that is I get lost in it. It's just so good. If you listen to like the background, and I think I said this on my, hopefully, a meditation episode. But I often use music to practice mindfulness. So I will like sit down and like really try to listen to like what's going on behind the voice and behind the sound and the melody. And if you do that to the other side, you're welcome. Because there is a lot going on in the back there that I don't think you even realize, but it's giving the song so much fullness and just it's just so good. So yeah, Save Your Tears remix, Sailing Souls, and the other side. You're welcome. This week is very special because we have a doctor in the studio. And by the studio, once again, I mean the Zoom call. We have a doctor. Her name is Dr. Afiya. She is the CEO and founder of PsychoHairapy. We break that down in the episode, so don't worry. But it was such a joy talking to her and learning about psychotherapy and the research and work she's doing with that. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll get into my conversation with Dr. Afiya. All right, it is time for the tap in, and this week, y'all, we got a doctor. I was trying to keep it cute, but we really have a whole doctor on the podcast this week. She is the founder and CEO of PsychoHairapy, which is a psychology practice and a research lab that uses hair as an entry point into mental health. She's a clinical psychologist and a hairstylist. Her name is Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. I've been so excited for this interview. First off, how have you been doing?
I've been well. I feel like during this past year, I've never been so popular in my life. Everybody wants to hear from me because I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
I think doctors are cool now. Yes. In this pandemic, you know, as people navigate health issues and especially the stress that has been coming up over the past year. So I'm feeling needed, very needed.
Yeah. So I was telling you off the interview, I was looking up some research on Black hair just for a project I'm doing, and I found your work, and then I found all the rest of your work, and I was just like, who is this? Like, I have to reach out to her. So I'm really excited that you're here. So just to start us off, I'm sure you've done this 1,000 times, but could you tell me a little bit about your background and how that informs the work you do now with psychotherapy?
Okay, yeah, I'll give you my origin story.
Yes.
So I grew up in New York, mostly the suburbs, Long Island, and I always loved doing hair. I would do hair at family cookouts. I'd do hair in my dorm room in college at the University of Pennsylvania. I just liked the creative aspects of hair care. I didn't charge people ever. I just found it artistic and creative. But I was a psychology major. And I remember talking to my Aunt Brenda on the phone one day and telling her my dilemma. Should I choose psychology as a field or should I choose hair? And she said, well, why can't you do both? Now, I don't think she meant for me to do both at the same exact time. But it was in that moment in my dorm room that I really birthed psychotherapy. I'm like, ooh, I could do hair and therapy together. And so I went to grad school at Howard University because I really wanted to specialize in Black mental health. And so through that training, I got a PhD in clinical psychology and then went on to be a full-time therapist. So really specializing in working with Black students, but of course, hair and beauty and identity would come up in these sessions. Yeah. And I decided to go back to school. I went to hair school after having a PhD in psychology. And so had to do, you know, all my classes and internships in between me delivering lectures or seeing clients for therapy. And so once I was a professor, I actually started a research lab to really study it because I was applying to positions. Now this is more controversial. I was applying to positions and people didn't understand what I was talking about. They were like, hair, you study hair. They would say, I don't get it.
Wow.
I don't get it. I'm like, how do you not get hair? But I realized that there really wasn't scientific literature on the psychology of Black hair. It didn't exist in the way that it does now, even with like, you know, more natural hair movements and things like that. And so I basically forced myself to create the literature on this. So I'm so glad that you're able to find my article, because I have one of the stylists that I work with. She was like, I wish your work existed when I was a student. And so that was one of the most meaningful statements, because I'm really providing evidence, or as you young people say, receipts.
Yes, the receipts.
That this is a real science. So that's sort of the origin of really studying the psychology of hair and how hair can be used in our healing.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing. When I found your article for my project, I was like really excited for my teacher to see it, because I'm like, I bet she has not even seen this kind of stuff, you know, like I'm a teacher of something today, you know, and I'm sure I did. But kind of maybe in the vein of that, I feel like a lot of my thoughts around pursuing a career in mental health, I'm trying to become a counselor, and seeing like just how hard it is to like navigate this like white majority space and like breaking new ground. As much as I want to believe that there are a lot of Black psychologists, Black therapists, like there's still work to be done, and like, you know, the balance is not, I don't know, you know. So in that, it can be very burdensome to think about just how hard it is to go out there and create new spaces and bridge new gaps and stuff. But it is really beautiful. When I found about psychotherapy, it's kind of like integrating mental health where we already take up space. That's kind of what that's what hit me the most when I looked into like the website and just the interviews you've done, and just like it fascinated me, because I think that's a little bit why I started this podcast, was because there are ways that people are living everyday lives, whether you're an artist, a musician, a grad student, but we all experience life, we all experience like a mental health, you know, and so there's something to always tap into, whether you're an author, whether you're maybe are a psychologist, and that's kind of comes naturally to you. But there are people, we all have something to tap into and something to share with other people. But specifically with, you know, the barbershop and the hair salon, and even this like mother-daughter dynamics, or, you know, whatever it may be, it's really beautiful that you found a way to just add to what's already happening in that space, you know, or just give some like constructive tools to like fill out that conversation. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
You're deep. Yeah, I like the language that you're using in terms of how do we take up space? How do we find words or language related to healing? It's already happening, right? So in the salon setting or barbershop space, there's already community building, and what public health researchers call lay health advisors. There are people who are, you know, providing support and emotional labor for the community. And so I'm really seeing it as my role and responsibility even to train people to be active listeners, to know how to make referrals when the concern is kind of too much for the space, to have cultural insights and really understand the history of Black hair in particular. That's key in terms of taking up historical space and recognizing the role of these settings in civil rights and, you know, Black liberation movements in particular.
Yeah. This might be a little bit unrelated, but in thinking about this interview, I was thinking back on my experiences with hair. And specifically, so in college, I used to do let's say like a support group for like Black students. So it's like a safe space support group. Every week we'd meet. Naturally, it just became majority women because the guys weren't really into it, but whatever. So it was usually 10 to 15 like Black women, you know, but it started off super small. It started off with like me and my co-leader, and then it was like the 3 girls that would show up, you know. But one of those 3 girls, before she came to my college, she went to hair school, or like cosmetic school probably. And so she would like offer her services to the group. And so that was honestly, because the group wasn't there to like be like a hair resource or anything, but for some reason that moment, that first semester I started that group, was like an affirmation to me of like, oh, this group is doing something special, because this person is able to provide a service that usually people have to go outside of their way to like you, and especially we're all new to this area. And so I felt so encouraged and proud of someone else's ability to take care of the community in that way. And so what she would do is she would basically give them their first one free, because she was never going to be like, you have to, so you see her work kind of. And then after that, she would give you a discount, but
she got you hooked.
Yes, they'd be like, Brianna, I don't got to pay you, girl. Like, they wouldn't even, they wouldn't end up, but she'd always say like, if you want to pay me, you can, but usually it would be like, whatever. So this one day, and these people were also just my friends, naturally. That's how I just kind of made some good friends. And so one weekend it was like a Friday, and a friend of mine, she had called me and she was like, hey, Alex, Brianna's doing my hair today. Do you want to come over? We're going to watch a movie. And I don't think I've thought about it enough before, because I went to the salon with my mom and stuff growing up. But there was this moment of like, oh, am I allowed to be there? Like, seeing her in that vulnerable space to get her hair braided. And like, these people, I haven't known them for more than maybe half a year, And it gave me this moment of reflection of like, why am I nervous to like, when she's the one that's offered me that space, And as you can tell, I'm a very like introspective person. And so it got me thinking about the sacred nature of our hair, and how like, for me, it signaled trust, and it signaled like comfortability, that like a conversation we've had, like I could tell we were friends, but for some reason that experience showed me that like, oh, we're actually close, because I can see her in this space of like, I'm not ready for the world, but like I'm in that preparation, So I don't know if what you found in your research about that, or just in general.
Yeah, you're tapping into something very historical and cultural. There's a Ghanaian proverb that says, when your sister is your hairdresser, you need no mirror. And the reverse, when your brother is your barber, you need no mirror. So it really speaks to the trust and vulnerability and how sacred that dynamic is. Like, I trust you so much, I don't even need to check it out. I know that you're going to have my back.
Yeah.
And, speaking to the strength of vulnerability in terms of really attaching to someone in a deep way. Oftentimes in traditional African societies, that people had to undergo an initiation into like a spiritual system to do someone's hair, because it was seen as such a sacred ritual, right? How you prepare your mind and body and spirit to receive something through the hair. And so whether it was in ancient Egypt, aka ancient Kemet, that you actually, like, only certain royal people could do hair, again, this initiation process. Or for example, in Nigeria, amongst the Yoruba, every single girl is taught how to braid hair. But anyone who shows particular talent and skill and listening skills becomes like the master braider for the entire family and community. So it just makes me think about the privilege that comes with working with people's heads. So, I'm a head doctor. And so it includes the mind and the hair. But just, it makes me think about that same rapport and safety that needs to be built even for a therapeutic relationship comes with the hair care relationship too, to witness and experience.
What's something surprising that you found in your research in psychotherapy that maybe the average person would be like, really, like that?
I think one of the things that stands out to me the most in terms of my findings is how well people remember their early childhood experiences with hair. So I've collected stories from like 300 or 400 people about hair. So I have something called the guided hair autobiography, where people tell their hair story, their life story through their hair. People are recalling like memories from like 4 or 5 years old. And these people are like 70 talking about some experience that happened with their grandmother when they were 4. So it really speaks to how we internalize these experiences. It's not like, oh, you had a positive or a negative experience. It was just a one-time thing. No, we really remember it in detail, who was there, what you were wearing, how you felt. So hair really becomes a part of our life story. And we don't, I guess there hadn't been a measure that existed to get these hair stories across the lifespan, but it really is a factor in how one story sort of connects to the next in our hair experiences, or even turning points that we have where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that before, and people coming to these deep conclusions about their hair.
Yeah, that is fascinating because I think I've learned that, like, you know, when as we get older, this is like, it's like anything new, but as we get older, we tend to forget the younger years. So it's interesting that we still have these pockets of nuance in hair memories. That's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I use the work of Mick Adams, who is a psychologist who has the guided autobiography. And so I've kind of tried to model some of my work off of general life experiences, but to make it more specific to hair and aesthetics.
Cool. Well, I have one more question for this segment. It's kind of a nerd question, so it might even be related to psychotherapy, but maybe it is. So I told you I was reading this article about Black men in the barbershop and how they become socialized through the interactions and whatever. And there was a part of the article that it was like a section for research positionality. So basically, you had like 4 people, I think, in the study.
Yeah.
And you gave them a bio of like kind of their experience in hair care and their experience with like how they take care of their hair, but also their position in the topic. And I haven't read like 1,000 papers, you know, I'm not, for the listeners, I'm not any kind of crazy reader like that, but I read my fair share of articles and I hadn't ever seen something like that where you took the time, or whoever wrote the paper took the time to outline the experience of the people doing the research and doing that intake work for the participants. So I was wondering why that is. Is it related to psychotherapy? Is it just like is it outside of that?
Great question. I'm glad that you noticed and observed that piece. So writing positionality statements in research is ideal for qualitative research.
Okay.
Oftentimes when people are doing quantitative research and it's like surveys and, you know, Likert scales and yes, no, or strongly agree, you know, those sort of things, that it's supposed to remove the researcher from the conversation. It doesn't, right? Because it still is bias and statistics, but especially when it comes to qualitative research and scholars are trying to prepare theories or do grounded research, that it's important to recognize that our identities impact the way we interpret data.
Yes.
And so for the 4 researchers on that paper, we really identified how might we be influencing these themes based on our hair texture, right? Because that was even in the description, based on where we grew up, because participants in this were from Northern California, Southern California, the researchers, Florida, and then I'm from New York. That could shape hair, right? In terms of what the rules are. So I think that it's very important to not totally de-identify yourself as a researcher, because your life experiences influence how you write and analyze things.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I was just like, I have to ask her this question because it was just so unique to me, and especially in the research of Black men. And like the paper talks about this, about how most research that is available for Black hair is centered around women. And so it just felt super interesting that it was included in that, because yeah, it was, again, it's like a nerd thing, because I'm like thinking about our relationship to, like you said, like who we're pulling these themes from, and how the way that we understand that is being like affected in the results, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to connect to this topic, because like I think we started this particular paper that hair care is usually seen as women's work or feminine.
Yes.
But to think about, I definitely think men, especially Black men, navigate hair care just as frequently, if not more, than Black women, because of having to get your hair cut. Like it's an expectation to regularly shape and cut and shave and all these things that, is not the standard. Of course, there's respectability, politics, and all that, but I think men engage with grooming their hair more, right? Because a woman can get braids and they stay in for 6 weeks.
Yes.
But, as we saw during this pandemic, men really miss their haircuts if it went more than 6 weeks. So just to even think about that piece of it.
Awesome. Well, that is all I had for this segment. Thank you so much for chiming in. I'm going to keep you around for the tap out, so don't worry, guys. We will be right back. It's now time for the small business shout out. Obviously, this week we're talking about hair, and so I had to find a small business revolving around hair. And so this week we're talking about Protect the Curls. It's a Black-owned, women-owned natural hair care product business. They make products for everybody, so they have hair butters. I think it's like shea butter and avocado, and it looks super luxurious and moisturizing. And you can also use these butters for skin, and so I think that's obviously a plus, that you can use the product for like several things. They also do hair oils. They have Protect the Beard product. So there's a beard oil, a beard balm, and a beard butter. Try saying that 10 times, but the products all look super nice. It's all natural. You can find the Instagram and the shop link in the description. But yeah, support small businesses. All right, it's time for the tap out. I asked Dr. Afiya to bring me something this week that she would like tap out of. What is it, Dr. Afiya?
All right. I feel like this is a confessional. I need to tap out of my intense media consumption.
Oh.
All right. So I think I might have a slight addiction to Instagram. In terms of this latest thing that I've been doing, and I know it's super weird, but this is a safe space.
Yes, of course.
You know how there's all these filters that come out in people's story? Each time somebody puts up like a filter lately, I have to click on it to see what it does to my face. I don't know if it's like the psychologist in me that I want to see how my face looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shocking sometimes. I'm like, what does that person really look like? Because it's distorting my face so much that I'm like, do I really know what this person looks like in real life? But I think I've always had this intense media connection. I love A Different World in the Cosby Show, and I will watch it obsessively, but I almost like put myself into these characters. I'm Freddie on A Different World if you watch it, but like I put myself into these characters. So I need to stop. I need to create some boundaries for myself in terms of not letting media totally consume my identity.
Yes.
And spend too much time on my phone.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's definitely also on my list. Especially when social media is a part of like how you get your work out there, especially in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It blends, my worlds are too blended. I'm like, usually social media was just for me to have my personal time, but now it's like where I try to market and where I try to get myself out there. So one minute I can be doing that research, the other times, and then I'm like 4 hours down a rabbit hole, or like, so I definitely get that for sure. Yeah.
So I think I need a social media intern. Just to put it out there if anybody wants to help me. So I'm no longer enabled to spend so much time on social media.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Afiya, for being here. We really loved you. I'm speaking for the people in advance. Thank you for being here. This is your time. Anything you want to promote? I know you do some certification trainings for people who are hair care specialists or maybe know someone in the family. Like, please, this is your time to share it all.
Yes. Thank you for giving me the space. I definitely want people to get certified in psychotherapy. So it's a 12-hour certification process where it could be for anyone, whether you're a stylist, a barber, into social media, a teacher, a student, as long as you want to understand how hair can be used as an entry point into mental health services. So you can get certified in this. Again, a 12-hour certification. There are self-paced classes, but then there are also 2-day training intensives where we go hardcore through information and really create a bond and community around how to care for your community and care for hair at the same time. So it's open for anyone to register for. You can check out our website, psychoharapy.org, to find out more information.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, Dr. Afiya, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed this.
Thank you again to Dr. Afiya for coming on the podcast. It was such a joy talking to her. You can find her website, social media, all the psychotherapy stuff down below. If you have a small business you want to promote, or if you have questions for me, if you have ideas for the podcast, please send them to heartofshema@gmail.com or DM me on social media. You can follow me at JustAlexToday on Instagram and Twitter. Please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts if you can. 5 stars, please. Write a review. Let me know what you think about the show. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Anchor, most places you find podcasts. So yeah, that's the episode. So have a good one. I'll see you next week.